Hello and a warm welcome to you. Welcome to EPTV, and we're broadcasting to you through the YouTube medium. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope that you're keeping safe and well at the moment. It's difficult times. We hope that some of this EPTV content is proving useful to you and entertaining and informative as well. And although there's no racing at the moment, as we well know, everything's on lockdown, it's also having a massive effect on the bloodstock industry, because at this time of the year, the sales season will be in full flow or starting to get into full flow. And there are thousands of horses out there waiting to be sold. So we thought we'd try and find out a bit more about the situation, how it's being handled in particular by Goffs and Goffs UK. I'm delighted to welcome Henry Beeby, the Chief Executive of the Goffs Group, and Tim Kent, who's the recently installed Managing Director of Goffs UK. Gentlemen, welcome, and how are you?
We're good, thank you, Mike. Yeah, good to hear from you.
Nice to see your face, Tim. How are you, Henry? Let's look at you.
Well, I know, I'm sorry. To answer the obvious question, on day one of lockdown, my colleague Nick Nugent and I said we'd enter into a beard growing competition, rather challenged each other, and said we wouldn't shave until we got back to the office. We thought it'd be a couple of weeks, it might be a bit of a laugh. As it stretches on, neither of us will back down, and we've committed to turning up on day one back in the office after lockdown for a judging by our colleagues, and then we're going to run home and get a brand new razor out and shave our faces. I've never grown a beard before. I don't even go unshaven at the weekend, so it's a novel experience. I'm not sure it's a very good experience, but anyway, here we are.
Well, strangely enough, Henry, I've got to say it actually suits you. Tim, you weren't tempted yourself to get involved, obviously.
Well, independently, I thought to myself, I'll have a few days, maybe a week off shaving when I started, and then I thought I could get used to this, but it wasn't very impressive, I'm afraid. It was very patchy. It was a very poor performance. And I thought I thought I'd be much better to just admit defeat and get the razor out, which is what I did quite quickly, and I'm really glad that I did. I won't be trying that one again.
Very good.
Well, it would take me about 5 years to grow what Henry's grown in 5 weeks, I'm sure. But gents, these are tough times for everybody involved in selling and buying bloodstock. Obviously, Goffs, you'd have been working, I guess, remotely for the last few weeks anyway. Trying to work out a strategy. We've seen you've postponed certain sales, cancelled one or two others as well. These are times that are unprecedented.
They are indeed. We took the decision on the 16th of March, Tim and myself, to close the Goffs UK and Goffs offices, but to continue to work. So we made sure that both of our teams were equipped with laptops, and we've been working from home. And of course, the technology that exists these days, not least this method of Zoom, has allowed us to continue to work. We've made a commitment both to ourselves and to our clients that there are a couple of sales you mentioned have been cancelled. Those are the sales that we would hold on the race courses, the Aintree sale and the Punchestown sale, because obviously both those wonderful festivals have sadly been cancelled. But we're committed with our sales at Kildare Paddocks in Ireland and the sales complex in Doncaster that we will not cancel any sale. We owe it to our clients. We have a duty to provide a marketplace as best we can. So we've delayed one or two of the sales. The first one to come up was the Doncaster Breeze Up. We put together a stunning catalogue, having had great success with the likes of Royal Ascot winners in the last few years. We delayed that to sometime in June. Originally, we said we'd probably hold that on the day before Royal Ascot, assuming that would take place. Now that's behind closed doors. We might be looking at some different options, but in June, that sale will go ahead. And the store sales, slightly less time sensitive. The Doncaster Spring sales at the end of May, and the Goffs Land Rover sale held just before Ascot in the middle of June. Normally, we push those out to the end of July and the beginning of August, and we feel confident in doing that because that category, the store category, is arguably less time sensitive. And Mike, you and I are both old enough to remember when the best stores of the year were sold in August. And in fact, the first sale I ever worked was the Doncaster August sale back in 1978. I was very young. But anyway, 1978, and that's when the best stores were sold. And it's only in recent years, the last 20, 25, 30 years, that it sort of evolved into May and June being the primary time. So we've been kept very busy, and we've been working hard, and we're planning, and we're adapting, and we're trying to react as best we can. We're saving the knowledge. It's not if this ends, it's when this ends. So we're planning as positively as we can without being deluded. We're planning as calmly as we can, and we're certainly not panicking. We'll be well ready when we get back to normal.
And as for you, Tim, if I can bring you in now, you know, you've been at Goffs for a long time. We know that in various capacities, but you know, having been recently promoted to leading the Goffs UK team as managing director, you cannot have imagined that you'd be facing a scenario such as this.
No, certainly I didn't get any warning of this when I took the interview late last year. But yeah, it's unprecedented times for everyone. It's certainly from my point of view, the year started really well with the January sales, and we were all delighted. And then it's amazing how coronavirus has changed things very, very quickly. But I can see this as being it was a steep learning curve for me anyway, but this is an even steeper learning curve. But it's you know, everyone's in the same situation. It's a worldwide issue, the coronavirus issue, and we've got to do the best we can for ourselves and for our clients, both vendors and purchasers, to try and put together a sales strategy that works for everyone. And as Henry said, we've got some plans in place. We're constantly monitoring the situation, both sides of the Irish Sea, because largely depends on what the BHA are able to do, what the government are advising in the UK, and the same in Ireland with the resumption of racing and what the government are allowing, because you know, large groups of people aren't allowed to get together at the moment. So holding a traditional sale is very difficult, but we've seen what Inglis have done in Australia with their recent yearling sale. They did a great job, and full marks to them for pulling that off in a short period of time. So luckily we've been looking at for a while, slowly in the background, but Michael Orton and Nick Nugent for Goffs and for Goffs UK and Goffs respectively have been looking at providing an online platform to assist with our current sales schedule. And as I said, that's something that certainly towards the end of last year we were working on behind the scenes, and there didn't really seem to be an end date for that. But we've certainly accelerated all of that technology. We actually had another test of that earlier on today, which seemed to go rather well. So we're close to finalising a system that will allow us to use an online bidding process to complement what we're doing already, and hopefully then we can get up and running and have sales of some sort. But it's going to be a while till it returns back to complete normality anyway.
Yeah, and speaking of got the two sides of the transaction as well, Henry, the vendors and the potential buyers out there, how much communication have you been having with those two sets of people?
Well, ongoing, endless, and constant. You know, we exist to serve both those groups. So we've been liaising closely with all the key players in each category. First and foremost, we've been talking a lot to the Breeze Up vendors. Tim in particular has been talking to all the Goffs UK Breeze Up vendors, but we've been talking to key vendors, key purchasers, to see what we can learn, what they know, what they think, and just trying to keep in touch. And it's really a question of, you know, working together as much as we can. You know, this is a very adaptable industry. It's a very resilient industry. Globally, it's a very small pool in which we swim. So we'll adapt quickly. And, you know, we're consoling ourselves with the fact that history tells us that bloodstock may rise and fall with the economy to an extent, but it's a remarkably resilient business. And that's because it's populated by people like the three of us. We've always done this. We're always going to do this. And so what do we do when times are tough? We prepare for the next event. For you, it's the next race meeting. For us, it's the next sale. For the vendors, it's the next sale. For the breeders, it's the next covering. And everyone just gets on with it, and we work together. And I think there's been a great sense of community in the bloodstock world, everybody working together, pulling together the racing world. And I dare say there's been lots of conversations across the Irish Sea between the authorities, BHA and HRI, to try and coordinate. And then at the same time, it behoves us all to play our part, to stay at home when we're told to stay at home, to try and halt the increase in the spread of the virus and work together. But as a team, the Goffs and Goffs UK team have been working so closely together. You know, somebody said to me, "What are you doing in the lockdown?" And I said, well, we're working because there's lots to do. We've been interacting. You know, I speak every day to the Goffs chairman, Eamon Mulhern. I speak to Tim, I speak to Nick, I speak to the financial directors, Ray and Derek, on both sides of the sea. And then Tim and I are interacting both with each other and with the two teams and with the teams collectively. And, you know, I'm sure it's the same for all businesses, but we've had to adapt. We've got to make the best of what we can. And I'm full of admiration for the Goffs and Goffs UK teams who went home without a murmur, have worked proactively. We've produced, we're promoting the spring sale. We've finalised, we've promoted the breeze up sale, I should say. We finalised the spring and Land Rover sales, all at arm's length. We've closed out a financial year because our year ends on the 31st of March. We've held board meetings and we've been working away, and that's what we'll continue to do until we get back to normal, until we can get back to, what arguably is the frivolity of selling racehorses. But I can't wait.
Yeah, indeed. And Tim, obviously you've put back the date of the breeze up sale, but if things exist as they are right now, it's going to be a breeze up sale the likes of which we haven't seen before, at least on these shores. How would it manifest itself?
I mean, the exact details are still to be confirmed, and we're hoping to know a bit more next week. And it's a constantly evolving situation, but there's no doubt that we're going to have to provide more information for purchasers to be able to buy the horses. So, for instance, we've never had the official timings before. There's been plenty of personal timing devices. We never had official timings. That's something we're looking at. It might well be that we have to publish the timings. We might be publishing height and weight of all the horses. We might be getting them vetted after the sale and providing more time between the breeze and the sale to allow agents and trainers to get in and have a look at them. Because of social distancing rules, it might be that we can't allow everyone to flood onto the sales complex at the same time to view the horses. So we might have to give clients a window in which to view the horses, in which case that will take a bit more time. So everything's evolving. I can't give you exact answers just yet because we're not 100% sure where we're going, other than the fact that we know we'll be selling in June, and it definitely won't mirror what we did last year. Anyway, it's going to be a very new scenario. But I think from speaking to vendors and purchasers, they're all very open to the idea. Some of these suggestions have been suggested for a long time, and we've resisted them. But now it's time to embrace change, and English have proved that it can be done, and we've got the systems to be able to do it. And as I said, as Henry said, and we've been in contact with vendors and purchasers, and there seems to be a huge amount of support for doing this, and it's up to us to make it work. And as I said, hopefully we'll have a bit more of an update towards the middle of next week when we have a better idea of exactly how it'll materialize.
Am I right to imagine then that you'll have some sort of hub, whether it's going to be at Doncaster or, I don't know, some racecourse in the south, perhaps maybe Kempton or whatever, where the horses will still be brought over to breeze, and then this will all be filmed and bidding will be done remotely online on that digital platform that you said you've been building recently? Is that the sort of scenario we're looking at? That's
certainly one of the scenarios we're looking at, yeah. I'd be surprised. I think the two options at the moment are either Doncaster or perhaps Naas in Ireland, and selling them at the Goff sales complex in Ireland. That was always one of the scenarios. Obviously, with the breeze up sale, 90% of the horses are from Irish consigners, so they're based in Ireland already. And there's a concern at the moment that we could get the horses to England to breeze, but you couldn't get the staff over with them. And and not only that, but with the extra time required between breezing and selling the horses, normally we breeze one day and sell the next. It's very straightforward. But at the moment, with the way this scenario is working out, we're going to have to leave a period of time between those two. Now, whether that's a week or 10 days or 3 or 4 days, we're not quite sure. But that's what we're trying to work out. And if we leave it a week between the two, which is probably one of the likely scenarios, people don't really want to be. They can't afford to be in Doncaster for 2 weeks. They can't bring enough staff over for that 2-week period. The logistics of it simply don't work. Plus, we don't know whether hotels, restaurants, and the like will be open by then. So it's one of the options is to look at the idea of selling, breezing the horses in Naas and selling them in Goffs. Because, as I said, most of them are based in Ireland, and it would mean that they could come up and breeze, then perhaps go home or be based at the Goff sales complex. But there are, it's not straightforward to simply say, "Oh, we'll just shift it over to Ireland." We've got a few things to work out just yet. So that's what we're planning on. That's what we're looking at the moment. But there's two options: either Doncaster or Naas. We do have some South of England options in reserve if we need them. But I would suspect at the moment that the favourites would either be Doncaster or Naas.
I hadn't realised, Henry, that there was such a 90%. Tim mentioned just now about them coming over from Ireland for the breeze ups. I would have, if you'd asked me to guess, I would have said it would be more like 70-30. But that's quite an extraordinary stat.
Well, 143 of the 165 lots catalogued in the Doncaster breeze up are based in Ireland, and I think what we would always say is one of our mantras in normal times and in difficult times is never say never to anything. So it's important we are flexible, adaptable, and are prepared to be innovative. So we have to react to what the cards were dealt. These are extraordinary times, and we'll have to adapt as best we can. So Tim's outlined a few of the things that are on the table. They're all under discussion at the moment, and we'll have to see and adapt. What we will do is we will provide the most vibrant market it will be possible to provide in the current circumstances and given what we know at the moment. There's a lot of things to happen. You know, a week ago, some of the suggestions we've just talked about would have been unthinkable, and in another week, we might have moved in a slightly different direction. But as I said earlier, we're committed to one thing. That is, when racing restarts in some form in Britain and or Ireland, we will start a programme of sales, always following protocols and directives from the government, always playing our part, always keeping our staff and clients safe, but we will have sales and we will return to a vibrant marketplace so that we can continue and people continue to trade thoroughbred racehorses through the Goff sales rings.
Yeah, well said, Henry. And we're delighted that you're watching here on YouTube, watching us chatting here to Henry Beeby and to Tim Kent as well. And we'd love some feedback from you as well via the YouTube medium. Questions to the two gentlemen we're chatting to here on EPTV. And in fact, John from York is the first one in here with a question, guys. So he says, in the past, what horse that you've personally sold have you been most keen to watch the progress of?
Well, I could go back a long way. I mean, there's one that stands out from a long time ago. When I was first starting to look at yearlings in my own right in England for DBS, which is now Goffs UK, I was sent to a farm in Lincolnshire of one of your favorite trainers, Pam Sly. And Pam Sly showed me a yearling filly who perhaps wasn't the biggest in the world, but I looked at her and I liked the look of her and the way she walked. She had a great swing. But I thought long and hard about whether I should be accepting it for the sale. I was very nervous about it. I was very inexperienced. I remember chatting it through with my father and with my colleague at the time, Michael White. And I said, look, this filly is just a bit small, but she's got a great swing to her. I don't know what to do. The average at the time was about 7,500 guineas. Anyway, both my father, Harry, and Michael White said, Pam Sly always presents the horses really well. You know, take a punt with her and see how you go. She came to the sale. She made 12,500 guineas, and she turned out to be Lyric Fantasy. And because I'd picked her and taken a bit of a punt, I followed her very closely. So her Queen Mary, the Pocket Rocket, she was known as, wasn't she?
That's right.
You probably commentated on her a few times, and it was great because she turned out to be a wonderful filly. She beat the older horses in the Nunthorpe, and she was fantastic. But you know, I suppose the thing is, we talk constantly about our horses, and we're really nothing to do with them in a way. We hold on to these horses for maybe 2.5 minutes. We're in the sales ring, and then we follow them like they're like ours. So when Tim and I are at Ascot or at Cheltenham with our colleagues, and there's a horse that's been through the sales ring in Goffs or in Doncaster, or been through our Aintree sale or through the London sale, you know, we watch those horses and we would get as excited as anybody when those horses climb up the Cheltenham Hill or win at Ascot in the Coventry or the Queen Mary or whatever it is. So any horse that wins suddenly becomes a special horse to us. And the bigger the race, the more special that horse becomes. Yeah,
Tim, question for you really, because I know that Henry's obviously got, Henry was born into this job in a way with his father, Harry, founding this sales company all those years ago. What about yourself? For example, Fiona from Worcester says, how does somebody become an auctioneer of racehorses? So I'm going to throw that one to you.
Yeah, I suppose before we talk about the auctioneer bit, I don't have any family in the racing game. My dad managed a farm, bred dairy cattle, so the breeding of stock was always very interesting. It was always something that interested me. We had horses growing up. My brother and I had horses, and we rode them around the farm and pony club and hunting, that sort of thing. And then during my gap year, I started riding out for a racehorse trainer and realized I enjoyed it, and spent more time at university reading the Racing Post than I did my lecture notes, which meant that I probably didn't get the grades that I needed to do anything else, and then realized I could get paid to read the Racing Post. And so I did a graduate scheme with the British Horse Racing Authority. And it was only then really that I'd never really been to a sale before then. It was only during that time that I realized I enjoyed the sales process, enjoyed the buzz of it. and I started doing some work experience, some bid spotting before Henry very kindly offered me a 6-month work experience placement with DBS, as we were then, which is before we merged with Goffs. Henry told me under no uncertain terms that there was no chance of a full-time job, but if I was any good, he'd offer me a reference. And I had nothing else to do at the time, and I knew that's something I enjoyed, so I took on this 6-month work experience placement in Hoyk, and I absolutely loved it. And I think it was 5 months in, Henry called me into his office and offered me a full-time job. And I suppose cheekily at the time, I said, well, actually, Henry, I'd rather go overseas and see get some experience elsewhere. To which his reply was, good, because we want to send you to America first. So I went to Phasic Tipton for 6 months, which was fantastic. Henry kindly organised that for me because he'd done it himself some years before. So I was there for 6 months and then came back on a permanent basis after that. So at the start of 2006, I started came back on a permanent basis, and it was only then that Henry said to me, what do you think about auctioneering? And George Stanners and myself, we were both starting at the same time, and we practiced a lot together. We sold whatever was lying around. Henry and the colleagues at the time, Michael White and Harry Beeby, Henry's father, were very good at taking us into the boardroom, taking us onto the rostrum, whatever it might be, and just practicing. And it literally is practice. And we did a huge amount of practice with the three of them. And then I got to sell 5 horses. I remember doing it for Emma Lavelle at our spring sales, and I was very nervous, but I enjoyed it, and then built from there. And it's a huge buzz if you get it right, but it literally is practice. In the UK, you don't need any formal qualifications for it. Things have changed in Ireland now with PSRA. You do need some formal qualifications to sell in Ireland. I was lucky enough to have sold in the UK for some time before that came in, but yeah, it's just literally is keep practicing.
Good stuff. Moving on, we've got, in fact, speaking about auctioneering and stuff, Kate by email asks, why are thoroughbred horses sold in guineas and not pounds? And of course, this doesn't apply to Goffs UK, but it certainly does to other sales companies, such as Tattersalls, for example. Why do you reckon that is then, that the guinea, which is such an ancient sort of concept, why do you think it still exists?
Well, it's historic. We sold, both Goffs and DBS sold in guineas for many years.
Yeah.
Goffs changed with the advent of the euro in 2000, and Goffs UK changed when we moved to our new sales complex in 2008. So we now sell in pound sterling in the UK and euro in Ireland. But the guinea was traditionally, the guinea was £1 and a shilling, now £1 and 5 pence. And the shilling used to be the auctioneer's commission. So that's where that came from. And there's only now Tattersalls in Newmarket still selling guineas. There are other sales they sell in pound sterling or in euro. So it's an old tradition. It's quite a quaint tradition. And that's the evolution of that particular process. The most challenging thing I found when we moved from guineas to pounds and then guineas to euro was remembering not to say 10,000 guineas, but to say 10,000 pounds or euro. And in fact, Tim would agree with me that when we go 1 week to selling in Ireland to selling in Britain, sometimes you have to remember where you are and what currency you're in, or otherwise you make an awful fool of yourselves. But auctioneers are a bit like jockeys, because we're up there and all our mistakes, a bit like commentators too, all our mistakes are very, very visible, seen and heard by everybody. So we're up there. But just going back to the earlier point about how you get into it. I mean, I was a very lucky, privileged person. My father had joined, you were very kind to him saying he was the founder. He joined the partnership of Doncaster Bloodstock Sale that was founded by Ken Oliver and Willie Stevenson in 1962. He joined them in 1964. His father, George Beeby, who was a trainer and a contemporary of Willie Stevenson, they knew each other quite well. So my father was the first full-time employee of the young DBS, and I came along. But Tim is evidence, as other people, such as my friend Jeffrey Russell, who's the director of sales at Keeneland, that racing and bloodstock is a true meritocracy. There's people like me who were born into it, and there's people like Tim who arrived into it. But I think, you can look at lots of people with family connections who have done really well, and you can look at people who didn't have any family connections who've done really well. You can look at both categories who haven't done very well, they make their own way. And when it works, it works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's a wonderful industry to be involved in, and we've enjoyed it enormously. And you're walking around, Mike, which is very awesome. Is the milkman there or something?
No, I tell you why I'm walking around because there's other business going on in the Cattermole household, and my wife needs to have a conference call with her teaching colleagues. So anyway, that aside,
Otherwise, you're going to go to the loo
Henry,
or something.
no, don't worry. What is the most expensive horse that you sold, and how did you feel when the hammer went down? Henry, I'm going to put that one to you first of all.
Well, I am extremely lucky because Nick Nugent organises the rosters for who sells which horses in Goffs. But in 2013, we landed the Paulin Dispersal, where we sold some wonderful horses, a wonderful selection of horses. One of the most exciting sales there's ever been, and certainly the most exciting one I've been involved in. And I took the gavel for the classic winning Chiquita, who was a beautifully bred daughter of Monja, classic winner. She'd won the Irish Oaks, quite a temperamental filly. And just to put that into context, the highest price horse I'd sold before I offered Chiquita was at that year's yearling sale, where I sold a yearling or auctioned a yearling for €2,850,000, which was a very exciting event in its own right. The day I offered Chiquita, I discussed with Nick beforehand what I thought she'd make. And we thought she might make €3, maybe €4 million if things went well. So Nick said to me, ask for 2 and you'll get 1. So I duly introduced her, asked for 2, and was immediately bid €3 million by the opening bid coming from to the right of the rostrum by James McHale, who was clearly on the telephone. So the opening bid on Chiquita was the highest bid I'd ever taken. There was only one other bidder. There was James McHale. And after a little while, Peter and Ross Doyle to the left of the rostrum came in and bid. And Chiquita made €6 million, which was the highest price horse ever sold in Ireland. It was the highest price at any breeding stock sale in the world that year. And it made headlines all over the place. What was my feeling after that? Perversely, the feeling when I dropped the hammer was one of disappointment. And you may, why do you feel disappointment? It feels disappointment because not that I've ever taken any drugs, but I suspect taking a bid is like taking a drug. When you've had one, you want another one. So when we opened at 3 million, I thought, will she make 4? 4, will she make 5? 5, could she make 6? And when she got to 6, I was dreaming of 7. So when I dropped the hammer, I thought to myself, I wish we could have kept on going. But I certainly wasn't anything other than absolutely over the moon, delighted, and delighted on a whole range of levels. 1, because we delivered a great price, but 2, because Paul Macon, who's sadly not with us anymore, could have gone anywhere with that group of horses, and so it was Chiquita. He could have gone to any sale in the world and she'd have been a standout and been a record breaker anywhere. But he chose Goffs, he put his trust in us, and we were able to repay that trust by getting that remarkable price. So I'll never forget it. I'd love to think I'd sell a horse for that and more, but you never know. And if I don't, I'll never forget that moment.
Tim, I've got to ask you, I mean, you've auctioned thousands of horses. As the new MD of Goffs UK, are you going to carry on doing quite a bit of that as well? Will you have the time to do that? I'm sure you will.
I hope so, yeah. That's certainly the plan. We've only had the one sale so far, and I'm hoping to be able to combine both. And that's, as I said, that is the plan going forward. But time will tell, and we'll constantly evolving the situation. But I want to keep going with that. I enjoy the auctioneering. We've all got stories that mean a lot to us, and auctioneering is a huge part of it. So yes, I want to do that, but obviously the MD's role is quite is going to take up a huge amount more time, and that needs to be right. So it's trying to balance them both. But certainly, Henry was able to do it. Edmund Marnie in Tattersalls and Newmarket is able to combine both. There are plenty of examples of people that are able to combine both, and I hope to be able to do that.
Fabulous. Gents, honestly, we could chat here for hours. I find it fascinating, and I know both of you quite well already, and I still get a great kick out of chatting about these sort of things to you. You're obviously going through a tough time right now, but fair play to you. You're obviously thinking on your feet, and it's an ever-evolving situation. So listen, good luck when we finally get to selling, bloodstock again through the ring at Goffs UK and Goffs over in Ireland. Let's hope it's not too far away.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, we're looking forward to it. It's not if, it's when, and everything will get back to normal. And won't it make the good days feel really, really good when we get back to those good days? Because they're coming.
Yeah, it sure will, Henry. It sure will.
We're all really looking forward to it anyway.
Henry and Tim, really appreciate your time, and Also, thank you for watching us as well here on EPTV, and we'll see you again soon.
Been great to see you, Mike, and particularly see into your bedroom, which is I'm not planning to go to again.
Fantastic.